Ethan Carter had always been a journalist in search of something, not fame or fortune, but the thrill of the chase, the pulse of the story that made his heart race with anticipation. He wasn't one of those reporters who wrote about the mundane, the trivial. He craved the mysterious, the elusive, the stories that spoke of death, dark motives, and hidden truths. That's what had led him to this moment, standing in the cramped, dimly lit bookstore in the heart of Los Angeles, flipping through a stack of yellowed papers tucked beneath an old oak table. The store itself was a forgotten relic of another era, its shelves lined with dusty volumes and its air thick with the musty scent of old ink. As Ethan skimmed the pages, a name caught his eye: Elizabeth Short. The name seemed almost out of place, like a whisper in the dark, pulling him closer. He froze, his heart skipping a beat. Elizabeth Short was no ordinary name. She was the name the infamous Black Dahlia. Her brutal murder in 1947 had captivated the world, filling the pages of newspapers for months and sparking endless speculation and theories about the identity of the killer. Ethan's eyes moved rapidly over the handwritten entries in front of him. These weren't just any accounts, these were intimate, disturbingly personal. His breath caught in his throat as the words became clearer. The entries seemed to be written from the perspective of someone close to the crime, someone who knew too much. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he read. Whoever had written these diaries wasn't simply documenting history, they were living it. It was the first of many chilling realizations that would follow. As he sat down, the creaky wooden chair groaning beneath him, Ethan's fingers trembled with anticipation. He had spent years researching the Black Dahlia case, interviewing experts, reading countless files, and piecing together the fractured fragments of evidence. Yet here was something new, something no one had ever seen before. First-hand account, possibly even from the killer himself. His instincts as a journalist kicked into high gear. This was the break he'd been waiting for, the story of a lifetime. The book he had been flipping through was a private collection of journals, hand-bound with faded leather covers. The dealer, an older man with an air of secrecy, had told him it was a rare find, one that had been passed down through generations, hidden from the public eye. There were no details on who had originally owned the diaries, or how they had ended up in the possession of the bookstore. The only clue was a name scribbled on the inside cover: J. Hollis, with the year 1948. "You don't know what you're getting into," the dealer had warned when Ethan expressed interest in the diaries. There had been something in the old man's voice, a sharp edge, like a man who had seen too much and regretted it. But Ethan had brushed it off, believing it was simply the dealer's attempt to capitalize on the mystery of the item. He hadn't known then how prophetic the warning would be. First few entries were relatively innocuous, rambling thoughts about the murder's aftermath, the media frenzy, and the police investigations that had failed to yield any answers. But then the tone shifted. It became darker, more personal. The writer began describing details of the crime, details that only someone deeply involved would know. Ethan's breath caught as he read about the mutilation of Elizabeth Short's body, described in harrowing detail. The words that were far more graphic than anything he had seen in the public records. It was as though he was sitting across from the murderer himself, hearing the dark thoughts spill out from the pages. Over the next several days, Ethan became consumed by the diaries. He couldn't tear himself away. At night, he found himself lying awake, haunted by the chilling words that seemed to echo in his mind. He felt as though the killer was speaking to him directly, pulling him into a world that was as fascinating as it was horrifying. He couldn't stop reading, couldn't let go of the urge to uncover the truth. The more he read, the more he felt the weight of the words pressing down on him. He started to notice strange things happening around him. His apartment, once a sanctuary of solitude, now felt unsettling. The shadows in the corners of his room seemed to shift, taking on forms that were just out of sight. Late at night, he'd hear faint noises scratching at the door, whispers just beyond the threshold. It was as though someone or something was watching him, but who? Was it a product of his own paranoia, or was the killer's presence closing in on him from the pages of the diary? One night, as he sat in his dimly lit living room reading another entry, his phone rang. The number was unknown, but something compelled him to answer. The voice on the other end was low, hushed, almost as if the person was trying to keep their words hidden. "You've been reading, haven't you?" the voice asked, a chilling calmness in its tone. Ethan's stomach dropped. "You're getting too close." The line went dead. The call, though brief, shattered any semblance of normalcy in Ethan's life. He tried to dismiss it as a prank, but the unease lingered. The next day, he returned to the bookstore, hoping to find more answers or perhaps a clue that could explain the strange occurrence. He was desperate to understand more about the diary and the person who had written it, but when he arrived, the store was closed. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Out for the day. Will reopen tomorrow." He stood there for a moment, staring at the door. Something was wrong. The bookstore had never closed so early before. Without thinking, he reached for the door handle, and to his surprise, it gave way. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, the shelves were disarrayed, the books scattered across the floor. A few of the light bulbs flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room. Ethan's heart raced as he stepped inside, his footsteps echoing through the silence. He moved quickly through the aisles, trying to find any sign of life, but there was nothing. No one was there. And then, as his eyes scanned the room, he saw a book lying open on the counter. Its pages flipped through as if someone had been reading it. The cover, the same leather-bound journal he had been poring over. He froze, a sickening feeling washing over him. The book had been left open to a specific page. His eyes fell on the words, "I see you, Ethan. You're not the first to get this far, but you'll be the last." Ethan's hand shook as he stood in the eerie silence of the bookstore, staring down at the open page of the journal. The ink was still fresh, the words crisp against the yellowed paper. He felt a chill crawl up his spine, his breath quickening. The sudden realization hit him like a wave. Someone had been here, someone had been watching him. The message was unmistakable, personal. It was no longer just a story. It was a warning. He closed the book with a soft thud, the sudden finality of the motion unsettling him even further. For a moment, he simply stood there, his mind reeling, trying to process what had just happened. Who could have left this here? How did they know I was reading the diary? His instincts told him to leave, to walk away from the madness that was slowly creeping into his life. But his curiosity, his obsession with the story held him in place, rooted to the spot like a moth drawn to a flame. Ethan quickly pocketed the diary, the weight of it in his jacket a constant reminder of how deeply he had already fallen into this dark hole. He took one last look around the store, but the place seemed even more desolate now, the shadows lengthening and closing in. The storefront window was dim, the sun almost completely gone, and as he stepped outside, a cold wind hit him, carrying the scent of decay with it. As he walked to his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following him. His eyes flicked over his shoulder every few moments, but there was nothing, just the empty street, the shadows of late afternoon stretching like tendrils across the pavement. Yet the unease remained, gnawing at the back of his mind like the distant echo of footsteps that never seemed to quite align with his own. Back in his apartment, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The walls felt too close, the air too thick. He set the journal down on his coffee table, staring at it with an intense, almost obsessive gaze. He knew he should stop. He knew it wasn't healthy to continue, but the thrill of the chase, the need to know the truth, was stronger than his sense of caution. He opened the journal once more, his eyes scanning the page where the message had been written. "I see you, Ethan. You're not the first to get this far, but you'll be the last." The words seemed to burn into his brain, haunting him. Who was behind this? Was it someone connected to the original murder, someone who had been watching over the years, waiting for someone like him to dig into the past? Was it something darker, something beyond human comprehension? The diary began to reveal more chilling details, descriptions of people who might have been connected to Elizabeth Short's life, but all of them were names that had never appeared in any of the public records, mysterious figures that seemed to hover on the periphery of the case. There were references to meetings, late-night conversations, and cryptic messages passed between shadows. It became clear to Ethan that these diaries were more than just a recounting of events. They were a confession, a map to something far more dangerous. As he read deeper, a pattern began to emerge. Elizabeth Short had been more than just a victim. She had been involved with people who weren't just ordinary citizens, but individuals with hidden motives and dark pasts. One entry described a meeting between Elizabeth and a man named Jack Hollis, the very name written inside the journal's cover. The words were vague, but the tone was unmistakable. Hollis had been someone close to her, someone she trusted, but what was their relationship? Why did his name appear again and again in these cryptic, fragmented entries? Ethan couldn't stop himself. He needed to know more about Hollis to understand the connection between him and the Black Dahlia case. The next morning, Ethan set out to dig deeper. He started by researching Jack Hollis, but the search led him down more dead ends than he anticipated. There were no articles, no references to him in any police files. It was as if Hollis had never existed. He was a ghost, a shadow in the background of the murder. The only place his name appeared was in the diaries, and even there the details were scarce. Ethan grew frustrated, but his obsession only deepened. He visited the local archives, scouring through dusty old police records and newspaper clippings, hoping to find some trace of this elusive figure. But as the hours passed, it became clear that Jack Hollis was not just hard to find, he was purposefully erased from history. As he sat down to review his notes, a piece of paper slipped from the pile of scrap from a notebook with hastily scrawled words. Hollis wasn't just a man, he was an idea, a symbol of everything that was wrong with the world. He was the one who made them vanish. The words seemed like a riddle, cryptic and unsettling. Who was writing this? Was it Hollis himself? Or was it someone who had been involved with him? Ethan's pulse quickened. He couldn't let this go. For the next few days, Ethan delved deeper into the case, retracing every lead, reanalyzing every piece of evidence. But the more he uncovered, the more he felt a presence closing in on him. It was subtle at first, strange coincidences, fleeting glimpses of people he didn't recognize following him from a distance. One afternoon, he noticed a man in a black coat standing outside his apartment building, staring up at his window with unnerving intensity. Ethan couldn't see his face, but something about the way he stood there so still, so purposefully felt wrong. By the time night fell, the sensation of being watched had grown unbearable. He returned to his apartment, the shadows now long and oppressive, as if they were reaching out to grab him. He locked all the windows and doors, but the sense of dread was pervasive, like a weight pressing down on his chest. He tried to push the feeling away, telling himself it was just paranoia, just a result of the intense stress he had been under while researching the case. But when the phone rang again that night, his blood ran cold. "You're getting too close," the voice on the other end said, its tone calm and controlled, as if it was relaying some fact he should already know. "I told you not to dig any deeper. Now you'll regret it." The line went dead once more. Ethan's world was spiraling out of control. The message from the caller had been a warning, but it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a statement of intent, like the killer, or whoever was behind this, was already planning their next move. The closer he got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. And yet, he couldn't stop. He had already crossed the line. As he turned his attention back to the diaries, something began to change. The entry started to feel alive, almost as though the writer was trying to speak directly to him. They spoke of a ritual, an event that was supposed to take place, a gathering that would reveal everything. But the closer the diary came to the present day, the more distorted the writing became, as if the author was losing their grip on reality. The words became fragmented, the sentences twisted. One entry, however, stood out. It was the last entry in the book. "The ritual is almost upon us, Ethan. You are ready now, just like the others before you." Ethan's hand hovered over the diary as he read the final entry. The words burned into his mind like a brand. "The ritual is almost upon us, Ethan. You are ready now, just like the others before you." The sentence seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as if it were calling to him, beckoning him closer. His pulse quickened and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. This was no longer just a story, it was a warning, a signal that he had crossed a line he could never uncross. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Was it really just his obsession with the case, or was something darker at play here? Was he really the first person to uncover this journal, or had others before him gone down this same path, lured in by the same promise of truth, only to become another casualty in the killer's twisted game? The thought chilled him to the bone, but he couldn't stop now. He had to know. He needed to understand the ritual, to uncover what had happened to Elizabeth Short, and more importantly, to find out who was behind the murders. The phone call, the cryptic message, the feeling of being followed, it all pointed to one thing: Ethan was in deeper than he could ever have imagined. The killer had already set their sights on him, and just like the others before him, he was now a part of the story. The question was, would he survive long enough to uncover the truth, or would he become another forgotten victim of the Black Dahlia's curse? The night was heavy with tension as Ethan sat in his apartment, the dim light of his desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. He had made the decision to go further, to seek out the answers that the diary had hinted at. The ritual, but where? The entry hadn't been specific, and the more he thought about it, the less he understood. What kind of ritual was it? Why had it been linked to the Black Dahlia murder in such a personal way? His phone buzzed again, a text this time from an unknown number. His stomach twisted as he read it. Meet me at the old theater on 7th Street at midnight. Don't tell anyone. Don't bring anyone. You'll understand everything then. You've been chosen. There was no name, no signature, just a stark, ominous invitation. His first instinct was to refuse, to walk away from the entire case and try to forget it all. But he couldn't. Something deep inside him, some dark, primal instinct, told him that this was the moment he had been waiting for. The story was no longer just a story. It was a path, and he had to follow it to the end, no matter the cost. Ethan's breath hitched as he glanced at the clock, just hours until midnight. He had no idea who had sent the message, but everything inside him screamed that he had no choice but to go. This was the culmination of everything, the final piece of the puzzle. He had to know the truth. The old theater stood in desolate silence, its once grand marquee now faded and broken. Time had taken its toll on the building, leaving it in a state of decay and ruin. Ethan stood across the street, staring at the darkened windows, the faint outline of the entrance barely visible under the dim glow of the street light. It looked abandoned, but the message had been clear. Someone was waiting for him inside. He hesitated for a moment, his fingers gripping the journal tightly. The worn leather soft under his touch. The weight of it felt like an anchor pulling him deeper into the mystery. The phone call, the texts, the warnings, they had all led him here. As he crossed the street and made his way to the door, he felt an uneasy chill crawl over him. Like 1,000 unseen eyes were watching his every move. The door creaked open as he pushed it, the sound echoing through the empty space. The theater was pitch black, save for a faint flickering light coming from the stage. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped inside, the air heavy with dust and neglect. The wooden floors creaked under his feet as he moved forward, his breath shallow and quick. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and drawing closer. He turned a corner, and then he saw it. A figure stood in the center of the stage, silhouetted against the dim light. The person was dressed in black, their features obscured by shadows. But there was something about the figure, the way they stood, the way the air seemed to hum with energy that made Ethan's skin crawl. You came, the voice said, low and almost amused, though the words echoed in the vast emptiness of the theater. You're more daring than I expected. Ethan took a cautious step forward, his voice barely a whisper. Who are you? The figure stepped closer, and the light from above illuminated their face, sending a jolt of recognition through Ethan's veins. It was the bookstore dealer, the same man who had warned him not to get involved. But now there was no hint of the kindly old man who had sold him the journal. Instead, his eyes were cold, distant, as if he were no longer entirely human. My name is irrelevant, the dealer said with a smirk. What matters is that you've come this far. You've unlocked the door. You must face the consequences. Ethan's mind raced. What do you mean? What door? What consequences? The dealer chuckled darkly, his voice filling the theater. The ritual, the game. You think you've been solving a mystery, but it's always been about much more than that. The Black Dahlia was never just a murder. It was the beginning of something bigger, something darker. And now, Ethan, you've been chosen to see it through. Ethan felt his blood run cold as the dealer took a step toward him, his movements almost predatory. You're part of the legacy now. You've become a piece in the puzzle, just like the others before you. And just like them, you will pay the price for your curiosity. What price? Ethan managed to stammer, his voice barely audible. The dealer's smile widened. You'll understand soon enough. And then the lights went out. Ethan's mind raced in the darkness. His heart was hammering in his chest, and every instinct screamed at him to run, to escape whatever trap had been set for him. But before he could move, the sound of footsteps echoed in the theater, again closer now, rapid, almost frantic. Suddenly, a spotlight snapped on, blinding him for a moment. When his vision cleared, he was no longer alone. Around him, standing in the shadows, were several figures, each one wearing black hoods. Their faces hidden from view, they circled him like wolves, their presence oppressive and suffocating. One by one, they stepped forward, each holding a black object, some kind of ancient ceremonial tool. Ethan's mind spun. He had no idea what was happening, but the realization dawned on him like a cold wave. He had stumbled into something far darker than he could have ever imagined. The These people weren't just part of a cult, they were connected to the Black Dahlia murder in ways that defied logic, ways that went far beyond anything he had researched. This wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a nightmare, and it was his. The air inside the theater thickened, pressing against Ethan like a physical weight. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat reverberating in his ears as the circle of cloaked figures closed in around him. The oppressive silence that had filled the room now gave way to a low hum of sound that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was as if the very walls were alive, vibrating with an ancient energy. Ethan's pulse quickened as his breath became shallow, panic beginning to set in. He took a step back, but the figures only followed, their movements slow, deliberate, and synchronized. He opened his mouth to speak, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat, swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. His eyes darted from figure to figure, searching for any sign of humanity beneath the hoods. But there was nothing, only shadows, only empty faces. The voice broke through the tension, cutting through the dark like a blade. It was low, reverberating through the theater with an almost hypnotic quality. "You've been chosen, Ethan," the voice said, calm yet chilling, as if speaking from the depths of the earth itself. "Chosen to complete the ritual." The figure that had first greeted him, the dealer, stepped forward, his face now fully illuminated by the dim spotlight. His expression was unreadable, but there was a glint in his eyes. Something predatory, something final. "You've already seen too much. You've already dug too deep. Now, you must understand the truth. The truth." Ethan's voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. His thoughts were spinning in circles, but one thing was becoming painfully clear. This wasn't about solving a murder. This wasn't even about uncovering the past. This was about him. He had become part of something much larger, something older and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The dealer raised a hand, signaling to the figures around him. "The ritual demands one thing from each who seeketh the ultimate sacrifice. The price for knowledge." Ethan's heart seemed to stop. "Sacrifice? What are you talking about?" "I don't, you already know," the dealer interrupted, his voice sharp. "The Black Dahlia wasn't just a murder. It was a message, a symbol, a piece of a puzzle that stretches back through the centuries. A symbol of those who seek to pull back the veil and glimpse the truth. But the truth comes at a cost, and the cost is always the same. You." The dealer's eyes bored into him, filled with an unnatural intensity. "You've made yourself the center of it all, and now you must pay." Before Ethan could process the words, a heavy weight settled on his chest, as if a hand were pressing down on him from all sides. The cloaked figures moved closer, their steps slow but relentless, each one holding an object in their hand, a dagger, a curved knife, an artifact that gleamed in the dim light. They circled him, their movements almost ceremonial, as if preparing for some dark ritual, some final act to seal his fate. Ethan's stomach churned, nausea rising in his throat. His hands trembled, the journal still clutched tightly in his grasp. He couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The faces around him remained hidden, but their presence was suffocating. The dealer stepped into the center of the circle, his voice now low, almost reverent. "Elizabeth Short," he whispered. "The Black Dahlia. She was only the first, the beginning of something much darker. Those who seek the truth, who try to understand the mystery, are drawn to the pattern. But the pattern has a purpose. It's not about uncovering the past, it's about continuing the legacy of those who have come before you. The ritual." The dealer's eyes gleamed as he looked at Ethan, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "And you, Ethan Carter, are the final piece. You've been chosen. You will complete the circle. You will become part of the story." Ethan's mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. What do you want from me? I don't understand." "What is this ritual?" The dealer stepped closer, his gaze never leaving Ethan's. "You've already given the most important thing, your curiosity, your desire for the truth. It's the ultimate offering. But now you must complete it. Now you must let go. Let go of everything you thought you knew. Let go of your life." Ethan recoiled, panic rising in his chest as the realization hit him like a blow. No, he wasn't just going to stand by and let this happen. There had to be another way. But the figures around him were closing in, their movements slow, deliberate, as if they were preparing to claim him, to take him as their final offering. The air seemed to grow heavier with each passing second, the darkness pressing in on him, filling his lungs, suffocating him. His mind raced, trying to formulate a plan and escape, but his body felt frozen in place. as though the very atmosphere of the theater had ensnared him. It was then that he noticed something a glimmer in the darkness, a faint light flickering at the edge of his vision. It wasn't coming from the figures. It wasn't coming from the dealer. It was coming from the journal, the very same journal he had been holding all this time. Ethan's fingers tightened around it, his mind surging with a new sense of determination. This wasn't just a diary, it was a key to the truth, yes, but also a key to his escape. Somehow, he knew that the answer lay within its pages. He just had to find it before it was too late. Without thinking, Ethan flung the journal open, the pages trembling as he turned them in frantic desperation. The words blurred before his eyes as the circle of figures closed in around him, their hoods swaying like shadows. But then, just as his fingers brushed the edge of a page, a sudden realization hit him. The journal wasn't just telling him about the ritual, it was controlling it. The last entry, the one that had mentioned him by name, it wasn't a warning, it was a command. The ritual is almost upon us, Ethan. You are ready now, just like the others before you. His breath caught. There was something in those words. A command to act, a realization that he wasn't just a part of the ritual. He was the ritual. Ethan's hand shot to his pocket, pulling out the black pendant he had found earlier, the one he hadn't given much thought to. Pendant was old, weathered, its surface covered with strange symbols. The moment he touched it, a jolt of energy shot through him, sharp and electric, almost like a pulse of life itself. It was then that he understood. The pendant was the missing piece, the final key to the ritual. The journal, the dealer, the mysterious figures, they were all part of the same plan. Plan that had been set in motion long before Ethan had ever come across the book. With a surge of energy, Ethan slammed the pendant onto the journal, the symbols on its surface glowing faintly. As it made contact, the ground beneath him trembled and the figures faltered for a brief moment, confusion spreading across their faces. The theater around him seemed to warp, the walls shifting, the air thickening. A strange wind rose from the depths of the building, carrying with it an overwhelming sense of finality. The dealer, eyes wide with shock, stepped back. No, you can't. But it was too late. The theater collapsed into a vortex of swirling shadows and light. The ritual reaching its apex as Ethan Carter, the reluctant participant, became the final piece of the puzzle. The Black Dahlia's curse had found its true heir, and now the circle was complete. The swirling vortex of shadows and light consumed Ethan whole, the world around him warping into an incomprehensible mess of dark tendrils and shifting shapes. His mind couldn't process what was happening. One moment he was standing in the decaying theater surrounded by cloaked figures, and the next, everything had been torn apart. The ground had dissolved beneath his feet and he was falling not down, but through something far worse than any physical descent. It wasn't the fall that terrified him, it was the sense that he was being pulled, dragged by something ancient, something beyond his understanding. The blackness around him seemed alive, a living thing that reached for him, pulled at him, trying to swallow him whole. He reached out, instinctively grasping for something, anything to hold onto. But there was nothing, only darkness stretching endlessly in every direction. And then, like a sudden slap of cold water to the face, everything stopped. He was no longer falling. Ethan gasped, his chest heaving with the shock of the abrupt stillness. Slowly, he opened his eyes. He was standing in a vast, empty space, a space that stretched infinitely in all directions, the walls, ceiling, and floor melting into one seamless void. The air was thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to press on him from every angle, yet it felt alive, not as if the very fabric of reality was waiting for something, waiting for him. His fingers instinctively grasped the journal, now a solid weight in his hands. The pages were still warm, and for the first time, he noticed the glow of the pendant embedded in the leather. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a key to this place, this limbo that felt like a forgotten corner of the world. The journal had done this. The ritual had begun, but the real question was, had it ever really been about Elizabeth Short? Or had the ritual always been about him? From the shadows, a figure emerged. At first, Ethan thought it was another cloaked figure, but as it came closer, he saw that this one was different. It wasn't human, at least, not anymore. It was something otherworldly, something old and twisted. Its face was obscured by a mask, an ancient face painted with symbols that burned like fire against the darkness. But even beneath the mask, Ethan could sense its malevolent presence. "You've completed it," the figure said, its voice deep and resonant. Like the echo of 1,000 voices, you've taken the place of those who came before you. Just as I did, and as others did before me. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't just about a murder, it was a legacy, a cycle. The figure's voice became more tangible, as if each word was laced with an unseen force. The Black Dahlia was never about a single victim. It was never about Elizabeth Short. She was the first, the catalyst. But you, Ethan Carter, you are the culmination. The ritual was designed to find you. You were always meant to be the final piece, the legacy that began long before your birth. Ethan's throat tightened, his mind struggling to make sense of the revelation. What are you talking about? The Black Dahlia wasn't supposed to be about me. I am just a journalist, a writer who... The figure lifted a hand, its bony fingers extended toward him. You chose to uncover the truth. You were drawn to it like the moth to the flame. But you weren't seeking knowledge, no. You were seeking power, to unlock the past, to control it. The journal is no accident. It has been passed down through the ages, given to those like you, and now you will fulfill your destiny. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. His mind screamed for answers. He tried to move, to escape, but his body was frozen in place, as if the space around him had claimed him, anchored him in place. No, he gasped, shaking his head. I didn't want this. I never wanted this. I just wanted to understand the truth behind the Black Dahlia. The figure tilted its head, as if amused by Ethan's words. Understand? You don't seek the truth. No one ever does. Not really. They only seek to control it, and in doing so, they become a part of it. Just as you are now. The figure stepped closer, and Ethan felt a tremor pass through him. The darkness around him seemed to close in tighter, suffocating him until he could hardly breathe. You are no longer the man you once were, Ethan Carter, the figure whispered, its voice like the soft caress of a predator's breath. The ritual has claimed you. Your soul now belongs to the Black Dahlia, to the legacy of darkness that has been passed down for generations. You will become a piece of that legacy, a part of the story. You will live forever in the shadows, and those who come after you will follow your path. Ethan's mind reeled. The weight of the revelation crushed him. No. This can't be happening. He tried to fight it, to push back against the invisible force that was slowly consuming him. But no matter how hard he fought, it was useless. He could feel the darkness wrapping around him, filling his lungs, his mind, his very being. The figure's voice softened, almost tender now. But there is one thing left for you, Ethan. One final choice. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A choice. You can end it, the figure murmured. End the cycle, the journal, the legacy. You can destroy it all, but in doing so, you will cease to exist. Your name, your story will be erased from history. You will never have been born. The truth will die with you. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. To end the ritual, he would have to disappear. He would have to give up everything. His life, his identity, his very existence. It was the only way to stop the endless cycle, to destroy the darkness that had claimed so many before him. But was it worth it? You'll be forgotten, the figure whispered. No one will remember you, not even the ones you loved. You will cease to be. Ethan looked down at the journal in his hands, his fingers trembling. He had spent so long chasing the truth, so long searching for answers. But now he saw the truth for what it was. There was no escaping it. The ritual had always been about control. It had never been about uncovering the past. It was about becoming part of it, becoming another piece in the never-ending puzzle. He closed his eyes, a wave of cold washing over him. The choice was clear, but the price was unimaginable. Could he really erase himself? Could he truly destroy the legacy of the Black Dahlia and free the world from its curse? With trembling hands, he opened the journal one last time. He could feel the energy radiating from it, the dark power that had been passed down through the ages. The ritual, the legacy, it was all bound to this book. This was the key. Slowly, his fingers traced the edges of the pendant. The symbols carved into its surface glowed faintly, and for a brief moment, Ethan felt the presence of all those who had come before him, the ones who had fallen victim to the curse. They were with him now. Their voices filled his mind, urging him to make the final sacrifice. End it. End the cycle. He took a deep breath and made his choice. With one swift motion, Ethan slammed the pendant down onto the journal. The world around him exploded into blinding light. Ethan woke with a start, gasping for air, his heart racing. His hands trembled as he sat up in bed, drenched in sweat. room around him was familiar, his apartment cluttered with papers and books. The journal was gone. Pendant was gone. Everything was normal. It was all a dream, a nightmare. But deep inside, Ethan knew the truth. The Black Dahlia, the ritual, the endless cycle, it was real. And he had destroyed it. He had ended the curse. And yet, there was something missing. A feeling of emptiness that lingered in the pit of his stomach, a void where his name, his past, his existence once had been. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, but the face staring back at him seemed unfamiliar, distant, as if he had never truly been there at all. For Ethan Carter, the Black Dahlia was not just a story. It was the beginning of his end.